There we go. Now you're allowed to unmute yourself, or you should be. And if someone could verify that, or at least tell me if I didn't. But what I did was I went in, unmuted everybody, and then muted you back, but selected the option that you could unmute yourself if you want to.
Yes, that works.
Ah. Hello.
Yes.
Thank you for letting me know. I don't know if you had a question, but.
Looks like Mason just answered.
Yeah. Cool. So it sounds like he wrote his own that's like a shell. Oh, I didn't demonstrate those. The shell hook stuff. And maybe somebody on the call, this is where, like I said, I'm not a programmer. I can fake it sometimes pretty well. Yeah, we'll be publishing all of these. They'll be online, and then if hopefully you're subscribed to Jackie maintains a listserv. But we also have the email. If you use your email address to register for this, we'll send out an email with a link to the webinar. But if you look at my site, it's pretty hard to miss, right? And typically by the end of tonight or tomorrow, I'll have everything posted. But if you go to the Automator, and then there's webinars, right? So it'll be before the in between here and the top one. I'll have a link, and then we'll post all the stuff there. And then Jackie will have it too, right? But I can take care of when I publish mine, and that typically is the same night, if not the next day. So I don't know if anyone can do a better job. Oh, you know what? Before I go there, so I was talking to a friend of mine in France, and he's been programming for like 25 years, and that's what he does, right? So he's the actual programmer, and I asked him for some help understanding the difference between the controls and events and the whole. Oh, you know what? I didn't have an example which I should show here in a couple minutes, but of the SendMessage and PostMessage, basically how you can connect to controls, or you can do control click also, right? That those are options as well. But I'm like, all of those things where I was getting very confused on if they were the same thing, and how do they differ than this ACC library also? Because is that using a whole different way to connect to the Windows objects, which gets back to every program has a different options that it might enable or not enable, right? The menu, this menu select stuff, it worked. I tested it in Sight, I tested it in Notepad, but a lot of the other menus, it doesn't work. The on and post message work for a much higher, in my experience so far, right? A much higher. Thanks, Mason, and we saw your link there. Thank you. They're much more likely to be available, and that's why I'm trying to be careful how I say it. It's not that they do and don't work, because sometimes they break. It's just whether, and for a lack of a better term, if they have the infrastructure, right? If it's available for you to connect through, because a lot of them, they don't have that. And so I just my first stop is COM, and then if it doesn't have that, I'll try to use the control click type stuff and the messages, which Winspector Spy. I'm sorry, let's get back to Winspector. Oops. So this tool, and this is what the on message, and actually I have, I have a good link. I didn't include it in the webinar and the deck, but I should have. A demonstration of using this tool. The problem is, it's not a problem. He did a good job. He just went pretty fast for me, and it was a lot of information. But if you search AHK Toots, so let me go back to here. So this guy, AHK Toots, I think it's Raptor X in the forum is his name. He years ago covered using this tool and how you can use it to hook into the program and see what commands are being sent to it. In the example, at least in one of his examples, he dives pretty deep into Winamp and how you can programmatically see. And so let me briefly show you on this one of just how overwhelming it is. So first off, I launched it and I can see all these different programs, right, that are running. But I want to, of course, tie it to one program. So I'm going to use this drag and drop thing and make it simple myself. And now I've isolated down to this version. I don't know how to. It's maybe it's just the class, right, for PowerPoint, and nothing. You're not really seeing anything here, right? Well, that's because I need to come over here and tell it to. I want to see the messages, right? The second I see this, now watch if I start hovering here, right, or do anything. I don't know why they don't have that stay on. Is there a way for me to say this to stay on top all the time? Let me see if I can. I think that's one of the options. Huh. Anyway, I know I have a script that'll do that. I just thought I could tell them to keep it on top at all times. So let's just move this here. So as I click around and do different things, you can see all these commands that the Winspector tool is registering and seeing. Now, there are certain ones that he gets into. This is all, I shouldn't say all. A lot of this is explained, and on the AutoHotkey, there's some decent, on the forum, some decent explanations of them. You can right-click and say, you know what, there's hundreds, if not thousands of these things as you click here, right? And it gets really confusing. And so what you can do is you can start right-clicking on stuff and saying, I don't want, there's a bunch that I don't want, right? So this, let's say, I don't even know what that is, but I'm going to hide that. And what you do is you start getting down, see there's still, like, okay, there's still a lot, I don't want that. Mouse leave. And what you want to do is narrow it down to just the things that you do want. Right. Typically, in his examples, if I remember right, it's something like WN command, something close to that. But once you do that, it'll give you these ID numbers, and that's what you end up passing. And you can pass it to your script. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. You can put these values in your script and then use like the PostMessage or the SendMessage, or you can do it with a DLL call, and maybe there's other ways, I don't know. But you can send those to basically to Windows, and Windows will interact with that program and tell it to click the button, right? Or because there are messages that'll say, like on Winamp, an example, be like, what's the next, click next song. Right, and so you're not going to Winamp and highlighting Winamp and telling it, find this button in the spot and click it. It's programmatically saying, hey, as far as Winamp knows, it programmatically had something tell it to go to the next song, right? Because you've identified exactly that little thing. And let's see if we can Google real quickly here. Winamp. Because he did this in his video, and it was like, oh, someone has actually already written down. Oh, SendMessage. That was a good one there. But I think if we scroll down here, so see all these previous track is 444. Next track 448. Play button 445. Right. Some programs they've already gone through. Oh, and here's the WM command. That was what he was filtering Winspector on and saying, I only want to see the WN command. Right, and then that if you don't have this cheat sheet, then you can use the Winspector tool to figure it out. If you can find a cheat sheet, by all means, use the cheat sheet, right? But it's a great, easy way. Hey, Captain Odin. Actually, I'm glad you're here because I know you often are much more advanced than I on these things. We were talking about. Let me finish my thought here, and then I'll give you a quick review because I'd love some help in explaining things. But you can programmatically, use this and send it to that program, and you're not sending keystrokes, right? It's just a great, easy way to be more consistent. So what are we talking about? We were talking about there are a lot of different ways to use AutoHotkey, of course, or other tools to automate things in Windows. And you can do things like send keystrokes and mouse clicks, where I think we all kind of start with. But then there are these things called controls and messages, and you can use event hooks or shell hooks to see what's actually happening in that program, and often either just read from it, or sometimes you can also reach out to it and tell it to trigger this event to happen. There's also the menu items. That's a built-in AutoHotkey thing, or you can do clipboard manipulation. But we reviewed, let me go, oh, here we go. We reviewed the ACC viewer, the screen viewer. Let me get this on the same, whoa, that was weird. On the same screen as this one. So this screen reader is this technology, the IUI automation interface, versus the ACC viewer example. That's this viewer and ACC library. And from what I've been reading, you know, this automation interface is the much newer, shinier, you know, go-to for Microsoft, but there's not a nice library supporting it on AutoHotkey yet. And so I still use this one, and it seems to often work. And then we've had webinars before on using COM to connect to things. But if you have any input, or anybody has any input on better explaining the differences of controls and using doing control clicks, and then the post and send message versus DLL calls, and maybe those are still leveraging the same things. And I got confused on what events. I saw shell hooks and then event hooks or something like that. And someone was explaining that they're different, and you wouldn't expect one to be in both. And that's where it's out of my realm to understand the differences. But if anybody has something to add to that, like I said, or if, especially Captain Odin, if you know of other ones we haven't mentioned here that you can use for automation, basically for connecting to other programs, that would be awesome. And I'm reading Dean's comment here. Sometimes the reason you can't view text objects because when it's built using non-Microsoft Windows. Yeah, I think, yeah, and if I recall correctly, I think it's more often than not, if your program was written with C++, then you should be able to see a lot of it. And then I think I read somewhere, was it Delphi or something like that? Often you can't. What was weird was I was researching it, and Tableau, from what my understanding, was written in C++. So I had high hopes that I'd be able to do stuff with the controls and messages, but I can't at least read anything from it. So I still think there's a way the programmers, when they write the code, can say whether they make that stuff available, right? But you're right, is if Adobe Air, I know I've run into that. And what was the other Flash stuff? I don't think you can do things with that. Let's see a question with the form. Let's see if the forms. Yeah, it's been seemed to be pretty reliable lately, but oh, I got there.
Maybe my work is blocking it.
The irony.
I hope not.
Yeah, mine did for quite a while, and then suddenly I did write them, and I don't, but it was like, you know, a year later it started to where I could go through, but yeah.
Yeah, I can't get to the forum. Comes up with an error from Cloudflare. I assume that's where where they have the forums hosted.
I don't remember.
I'll try it from home.
So I think that control send click is just message, or maybe it's So can you elaborate at all at the difference between messages and an event stack, whatever that is? Because that's where I could find stuff talking about them, but not being a programmer, trying to understand the differences. And maybe for my level, it just doesn't matter, right? It's like, hey, I understand sometimes one works and sometimes the other one works, right? As far as, again, I shouldn't say works. Sometimes it's I have the ability to use it within that program to connect to it. I just don't know, are they built for different things? And like when you do a DLL call, is it in connecting to a program, is it using one of those two things? Or maybe it often is. Obviously, DLL calls can be quite a variety of things. Let me, while we're sitting here too, I will, let me close this down and let me jump to where an example, I think I have an, oh yeah, I can do an example of the ACC viewer of using the code. So I'll launch it and then so here is what my code looks like to get information from it. And so let me launch Firefox. And let me see what I got going here. There's ACC viewer, many clicks. Let me get rid of that. Come back to here. I'm going to go ahead and, darn it, again, I don't know what's with my button there isn't always coming up to launch it in sight. But now it's launched. It looks like for some reason, yeah, I'm getting multiple instances of site. I think that's my problem. I just don't understand why. Okay, so now that's running, and let me come back. I'm an idiot. I closed Firefox. Okay, now, there we go. Okay, so let me get the viewer, and let's get a number. Let's take this. So here's the path. It's 4.25.3.2. I'm going to click it, and now it's copied that to my clipboard. And I'm going to duplicate that, comment out that line. I'm going to add this in here. And now see over here where it says role editable text, right? When I save this, relaunch it, and run, editable text. Right, so it accessed the path. It went down this path. I think of it as like the DOM, but I don't know if that's the same accurate analogy. But it says, hey, under Firefox, go down this path, look for the role, return it, and I'm not storing it. I'm putting a message box up. But that's where this role, if I change it to value, right? I'm going to change this to value, reload it, and launch it, and that's why it's grabbing that. That's the path that's actually in. This is my home page, right? So that's how I'm able to grab text using the ACC viewer, all right? And I could programmatically tell it, go to a different location and get, return it back or do something with it. And these are the available things: the name, value, role, state, action, location. Jackie he brought up a good point of, in Tableau, even though I couldn't do some things, I wasn't at the time at least able to click things the way I wanted to. But in the sense of control, because there's no class, there's this overall class, but it didn't have, and I forget, I thought it was on here somewhere, a more specific class for the button. Oh, I was trying to use the control menus. Excuse me. But this 1.6.2.32, I could it has the location, right? And so I could easily, because let's say I wanted to detect where these windows are, right? I can go grab each of these locations, right? And programmatically isolate that. So when I do send my control clicks, it doesn't matter if my resolution is different, right? I can easily get the actual location regardless of, let's say, if I don't know if those box sizes change, but if it was smaller or just in a different spot, right? It's going to take that into account. And so that's why I was like, yeah, that's pretty awesome. And again, this is getting it. And then I was working through, I haven't finished it yet, but if I remember right, I think it was Lexicos. Oh, no, SyncFace, sorry. He had an example where he used it to programmatically click the open button in Notepad. And what it boiled down to was, as long as it's the default action for that item, that's what was critical, right? Being the default action, you can trigger events in that. And maybe there's more, but that's what we got there. I see cat mode and approaches. So control send click is just my, oh wait, I already read that. The event stack is the stack in Windows where, oh, I did not know that. Awesome. I'm going to read this out loud just because I'm in this recording. People will see what it is. So the question was about what is the difference between control send and click and messages, and so he was replying that control send click is just messages, or maybe it's just put on the event stack. The event stack is the stack in Windows where mouse and key input is prior, and I'm an idiot because I'm going to bring this over on the screen. And it's available in the video, but is available to other in addition to GUI and other events. Not events. Okay, thank you. Yeah, and that was where when the things in the forum that I was reading up on, it was getting pretty minutia of looking at the stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think I would be doing a lot of that stuff, but I was having a hard time understanding the difference between the two. Thank you. Just awesome. Did anybody else have any questions or anything? If not, we'll be wrapping up. Again, we're going to send out the deck to people that registered. There will also have the videos available, and you can, in the deck, we'll have links to sign up for particular webinars and notifications. But thank you guys. Hopefully that you learned something. I know I learned quite a bit putting this stuff together. It's amazing how many different ways there are to automate things and connect with things. Alrighty. Well, thank you guys. Let me put it here in chat.